Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show. As first responders, we risk our lives every day. Our financial security is under attack. Our pensions are in a state of emergency. A single on-duty incident can alter or erase our earning potential instantly and forever. We are the heroes of society. We are self-reliant and we need to take care of our own financial future. The Heroic Investing Show is our toolkit of business and investing tactics on our mission to financial freedom.
Welcome back, Heroic Investors. This is episode 184 of the Heroic Investing Show. I really cherished this one. I spent a lot of time working on the audio. My guest on this show is Mr. Welcome Wilson. He's got an awesome name, and I won't spoil that for you. I'll let him describe his name. It's not often that we get to interview people that are 90 or 91 years old. He's got 9 decades of experience on this earth. And as I grow older and I start to think about where the true knowledge comes from and where I learn the most, and it's from my elders. And I didn't so much appreciate that when I was younger, in my 20s and 30s. Like most people, I thought I knew everything. When I was a young kid, I do remember learning a lot from and being amazed at things that people who were much older than me told me. Somehow, I think I got lost in developing my own career and moving along. As I talk to people now, though, I'm back, and I start to just be amazed at what people who have been around the block for 9 decades can tell you about life and about what's important, because they just have this way of distilling things down to the more obvious. You know, they got a lot of things that have gone through their brain in that period of time, and the ones that have stuck around are really, really important things. So I think you'll really enjoy this conversation with Welcome Wilson. You know, I was recently on a podcast with Dr. Forrest Bryant, and actually I played both halves of that podcast, and it reminded me of an event we did called Freedom and Legacy Panel at his High Speed Alliance mastermind group back in January. And the thing that I remember walking away from those conversations with, the most important, you know, something that I talk about very frequently is that, you know, time is the most valuable asset you have. But to me, also, what I distilled that event down to was that legacy is about the experiences and the knowledge that you pass on to other people. It's not about the money you pass on. Money's easy to make and lose and make again. Certainly, I get stressed out when I lose money and when I'm figuring out how I'm going to make the next amount. But in the end, it's not hard to do. It's not impossible to do. All you do have to do is add value to other people, and the money shows up. But what is difficult to get back is time, and what is impossible to pay forward to others unless you write it down or spend time telling them this is the lessons and experiences that we pass from generation to generation, and that makes us a species that is able to get smarter as each generation passes. Well, here we have a gentleman who's in his 90s. He's recently written a book at age 90 about his lessons. The title of his book is Always Welcome, and its subtitle is 9 Decades of Great Friends, Great Times, and Mostly Great Deals. In our conversation and in that book, you know, he has lots of tips that he puts out there. He has some great war stories and other stories about his life, and you know, having worked for JFK and having worked for Lyndon Johnson and Eisenhower. I mean, this guy's been around the block, and he's just got some great stories, some great insights. He talks about being willing to make a pitch to someone you've never met, you know, not just thinking about it, not preparing, not educating yourselves, but actually getting out there and taking the action, facing the fear that we all have and making it happen. And that's, you know, I just think really inspiring. He says, don't, you know, let immediate success go to your head. In a good economy, everything works. You're not invincible. You have absolutely no control over the economy, and you will fail from time to time. And it's not necessarily your fault, but understanding that you're kind of riding a wave out there, dust yourself off and get back at it. He says, never go against your gut instincts. Man, I've really learned this one in spades. When I have a spiny, you know, a tingly sense that goes off, I just follow it. There's so many opportunities out there to do business. There's so many people. Pick only those that you don't ever get warning signs with, and on deals that you don't get warning signs with. There's just enough to go around. Don't hesitate to copy something that works. He says in school, if you copy, you fail. You're called cheating. Robert Kiyosaki talks about the same thing, but in real life, in business, in entrepreneurship, pay attention to what's working out there and maybe adapt it to your business, adapt it to your industry, adapt it to your clients so that you can continue to add more value or your customers. So I don't want to go too much through it. Again, as I mentioned, this has got some challenging audio. I invite you to stick with it and try to fight through it. I've done a bunch of editing to try to improve it, and I think my podcast host will be able to do even more. It's worth it. Welcome Wilson's an amazing gentleman, and I was honored that he would spend some time on my show and that he felt like that he could give some advice to those who are rising up through the ranks. And I completely agree. After 9 decades, he's got some awesome advice to pay forward to all of us. So please do enjoy this podcast with Mr. Welcome Wilson.
You were in the Navy.
Yes. Commanded a nuclear submarine and retired 2 years ago.
No kidding. Well, I always tell people that I grew up in the Navy. I was married and had a pregnant wife, been married a year and a half. In 1950, I got orders to report for duty as an enlisted man in the Korean War. So I reported to San Diego, where I was in boot camp. Later, I was commissioned an officer, but I had a college degree. So I tried to big shot my way around the Navy. Well, it didn't work. So I learned that you've got to be genuine. I'll never forget what the company CPO said, Chief Petty Officer.
Chief Petty Officer,
He said, Wilson, I'm going to give you some advice. He said, if you take it, you'll have a great career in the Navy. If you don't take it, you're in for years of hell. And he says, first place, I'm sure you were somebody very important in civilian life, but you're in the Navy now, and you'd better get with the program. So I want you to stand up, and don't you ever sit in my presence again. And I want you to get out of here. Don't you ever come to my office again without being invited, and get with the program. So in 5 minutes, he straightened me out. And I got with the program, and 3 days later, he named me commander of the entire company.
Wow.
As recruit chief petty officer. That lesson has stuck with me all my life.
Isn't it amazing how a moment will do that for you? When somebody touches you with the right message at just the right time. I have a very similar one from when I was in the command training pipeline, and I thought I had done a tremendous job on this one exercise of shooting a torpedo. And this instructor, who, by the way, is now the chief of naval operations, he's the senior guy in the Navy at the moment, he pulled me aside and said, you look like a complete idiot. If you do that with your own ship, you will never be able to command it, or something to that effect. I mean, I shouldn't say that the CNO said those words. He didn't say those words, but it was that effect. And turned me around, just like you said, and it totally, it set me up for an amazing next 5 years.
It was a life-changing conversation. And I've had about 5 life-changing conversations in my life.
Yeah.
And they're all very important.
Yeah, and I had one with the senior enlisted man on my ship when I was in command. Was the only guy probably that could sit me down and have that conversation that chief petty officer had with you, kind of, get you going in a new direction, right? He's the only guy and he did it to me numerous times, and I welcomed that, right? So he would say, you mind if we go to your office, right? And then we would change the direction we were going because he knew the people better than I did.
I see.
What about any of the other life-changing, any other ones that are as equally important?
Well, I had one with the dean of junior college in Brownsville, Texas. Brownsville, Texas is located on the tip of Texas at the southern border with Mexico. And all during World War II, I was in high school in Brownsville, Texas. And if you were 17 and a half, you were gone. Your family was in the service. So all the jobs were held by 15, 16, 17-year-olds like me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I was a disc jockey and newscaster on a local radio station. And when I was 15 and a senior in high school. But anyway, back to the dean of junior college, I had my orders to report for the draft, but they were canceled after Harry Truman dropped 2 atom bombs on Japan, and the war was canceled. So I was very, very disappointed that I did not get to serve in World War II. But everybody was disappointed if they didn't get to serve in World War II. It was a different generation.
Yeah.
So after I got my orders canceled, I signed up for my second year of junior college at Brownsville Junior College. And after about a month, the dean called me into his office. And he said, "Welcome. I don't think you even recognize it, but you're a leader. You need to know that. And in every situation, you need to be the guy that organizes everybody and takes the leadership role." Well, I'd never thought of myself as a leader. I'd always thought of my brother as the leader because he was 2 years older.
Sure.
So a month later, I was elected president of the student body. A month after that, I was elected president of two of the three clubs in the junior college. The third club was a Phi Beta Kappa club, and I wasn't even a member of that club. So, and ever since then, even, for example, later on, I was in the executive office of the president when Eisenhower was president. And I had the rank of a 3-star admiral when I was 30 years old.
Yeah.
I had civil service status. And so I was sent to a Army-Navy school of some kind in Virginia for high-ranking people in the military, and they had one civilian and one person from the State Department. All the rest of them were generals and admirals and such. I was 30 years old and a 3-star admiral in the civil service.
Right.
So I was the one who organized the group because that's what I was told to do. And so that was a life-changing conversation.
That's amazing. So, Mr. Wilson, tell the audience about your time in the office with under both President Eisenhower and President Kennedy. So very different presidents and also very, very challenging times for America.
Yes, in those days, it was in the 1950s, nobody worried about traffic. Nobody worried about the economy. Everybody worried about nuclear attack.
Right.
And being wiped out. And I had been director of civil defense in Houston, Texas, and was appointed by Eisenhower to be the 5-state director of defense mobilization. And that's where we organized the civil government in order to prepare for a nuclear attack, prepare for war, really, and things like rationing and everything you can imagine. And also, of course, protecting the citizens, bomb shelters and things and such as that. By the way, a small branch of my office, I had about 100 employees. A small branch is what is now called FEMA.
Okay.
We call it the Natural Disaster Office. And I had serious money, which I would pass out. And because of that, I got to know Lyndon Johnson, for example. He was a senator from Texas. I got to know every 5 governors very, very well, and all of the 30 congressmen, 10 senators. It was a great introduction into politics, being in that position. Kennedy, by the way, was the most charismatic man I ever met. Let me start with Eisenhower. I met Eisenhower about 2 years before he appointed me to the executive office of the president, and I was surprised that he was pink. I don't mean his policies, I mean his face.
Yeah.
Was absolutely pink.
Yeah.
And of course, no color photography in those days on television, and no color in the newspapers. So people didn't know that. So I was stunned when I met him that he was pink. The thing about it is he played a lot of golf, and he had the kind of skin but not tan.
Yeah.
As a result, his face was pink, and it stayed pink all the time I served him. By the way, I also had an office in the executive office building next door to the White House in Washington, D.C., and from my office on the first floor, I could look out my window at 5 o'clock in the afternoon And there, the President of the United States would be hitting golf balls. It gave you a warm feeling that this country's in such great shape that the President's out there hitting golf balls. John F. Kennedy was a lot different. Kennedy was the most charismatic man I ever met. And I met him shortly after the Democratic nomination for president. About a month later, he came to my hotel room in Washington. Now, that makes me sound important, so let me clarify that. I was there with the former mayor of Carlsbad, New Mexico. New Mexico is one of my 5 states. So we decided to have the congressional delegation from New Mexico over to our hotel suite. So at the last minute, we got the idea of inviting John F. Kennedy, who had just been nominated for president, to come. And he came, stayed about an hour. But he had the most natural, charming smile of anybody I've ever met in my life. And I was with him on other occasions. I served about 9 months under him after he became president. Then I resigned to go into the real estate business in Houston, in Galveston, after a life-changing conversation with my wife. And I'll keep this brief, but having the rank of a 3-star general or a 3-star admiral in the civil service, I was a big shot. So whenever I would fly to New Orleans, for example, to make a speech, my picture would be on the front page of the Times-Picayune newspaper. It was the same everywhere: Oklahoma City, Houston, Dallas. A full colonel would have to meet me if I landed at an Army Air Base. A full colonel, because of my high rank. So I had a conversation with my wife, a life-changing conversation, I might add. And that was that I told her, I said, look, we're living the good life. Our income is more than it's ever been before. I'm treated with great respect wherever I go. This is the good life. And she said, welcome. I didn't marry you to be the wife of a federal employee. She said, I want my kids to go to private school. I want to be a socialite in Houston. I want to live on River Oaks Boulevard. So she made it clear that my engagement was not what she had in mind. So I resigned my position and became a real estate developer. And by the way, my 5 kids all attended private school. And she became a major socialite in Houston. And we lived on River Oaks Boulevard for 30 years.
Sounds like she had her plan figured out, and you helped execute it.
Back to JFK just a moment. I met him again when he came to Houston to announce the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. And the mayor put me in charge of the event. So that was nice. We had a huge crowd. Then I met him again the night before he was assassinated in Houston, Texas. He came to Houston to make a speech for our congressman, Albert Thomas. And the mayor put me in charge of the airport arrival and the motorcade downtown. And it was my first opportunity to meet Jackie. She was lovely, lovely, lovely. Then the next day at noon.
Assassinated, yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing those moments that not too many people have personal memories of. So real estate, obviously a huge success in your world. One of the things that I hope you will weave in here before we run out of time is what has been your key to 90 plus years and being sharp as a tack?
Well, I could say a lot of things, but I'll skip things like clean living and that you know is probably not accurate. But I would attribute it to going to a health club 5 days a week for 55 years.
Wow. Okay.
And at least 5 days a week. Some years it was 6 days a week. And I haven't been there since this morning at 5 a.m. And with my son, Welcome Jr., who is 68 years old. And we work out every morning, and I usually walk from a half a mile to a 1 mile on the indoor track. And then I do about 30 or 40 minutes of weightlifting.
Nice.
That helps.
Yeah, and you're active in your real estate still.
Yes, I'm at the office now. I need the money.
That's awesome. Certainly fitness keeps the mind, or keeps the body safe and fit and, operating for many years. But you got to keep that mind active, right? And obviously working in your real estate has done that for you. So I'll transition, I guess, just to any advice you have, because predominantly the people that are on this show are either real estate investors or want to do that. And most of them are firefighters, police officers, active duty, and veterans from the military service. So advice in life outside compared to the military or just real estate would be really appreciated.
My father believed in guts and determination for success in business. Guts and determination. By guts, he didn't mean guts to get into a fight. He meant the guts to go make a pitch. So I would say to your audience, you've got to learn to make a pitch that's highly in your favor to somebody you've never met before, and that's the way you get deals. For example, my first real estate development was in Galveston, Texas, in a project called Jamaica Beach. And it's now a separate city under Texas law. And I had no money, so I went to somebody who had money, and I made him made a pitch. And so he bought the land for me, and then I carved off 15 acres for him. And then he showed me the rest of the land. It was some of the best land, by the way. He showed me the rest of the land for $1 down. So without any cash, I was able to get into the subdividing business. Then I went to his bank and borrowed $250,000 unsecured. In fact, they did not even ask me for a financial statement because he co-signed the note.
Okay.
So I would say that being willing to make a pitch to somebody is key to success.
Can I ask you, Welcome, what the last thing is you've read?
It was called Eisenhower's Bluff. And it was about President Eisenhower and about how he was president. He kept us out of war for 8 years. And he did it by directing 1,000 airplanes every day to go toward the Soviet Union carrying bombs, carrying nuclear bombs. And at the last minute, under what he called the fail-safe program, they would get orders to turn around and come back. So every day, we were within seconds of being in a nuclear war with Russia. So they had great respect for Eisenhower, needless to say, because they knew that at any moment, he'd wipe out the entire Soviet Union. And
Wow.
That was Eisenhower's bluff.
I spent 30 years in the nuclear Navy and didn't know that story. That's amazing. How many books do you read a year, do you think?
Well, I've switched. I don't read them anymore. I buy a CD of a book.
Sure.
Listen to it in the radio in my car.
I do that too.
And that works. It is so easy, and you can finish a book about every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I listen to a lot of books.
That's awesome.
I have written a book.
Okay. When?
Well, it was released September 1.
Of this year? Of last year?
Yes.
Okay. So at age 90, you wrote a book.
Yes, it took me about 6 months to write it. The name of the book is Always Welcome.
Nice.
And in the book, it's available on Amazon, by the way. It has thank heavens, it's got a high rating on Amazon. It's a biography in a sense, but in there includes Welcome's Rules of Order, which is 50 things that I recommend people do to succeed in business.
Wow.
The subtitle is How to Succeed in Business and Life by Avoiding My Mistakes.
That's amazing.
So it's a combination motivation book and a biography.
Awesome. So if I could summarize some of the keys that have been successful for a smiling life into your 90s is physical fitness every day, 5 days a week at least, spending a lot of time with family, reading nonstop, being optimistic, running your company, and writing a book at age 90. That's fantastic.
You're very kind. And being willing to make a pitch.
Oh my gosh, I missed it. Yes, being willing to make a pitch.
The point is, most people can't keep a straight face when they're asking for something they don't deserve.
Right.
You've got to be able to keep a straight face when you make your pitch.
That's awesome. Nobody's ever said that to me, and it makes total sense. And making a pitch is selling, and everything in life is about selling. It's getting people to see your side. But when you're in real estate, it actually is making a pitch. It's literally doing that. Wow. Sir, anything else you want to say to the audience? I give you the opportunity.
In my 50 items, the Welcome's Rules of Order, there are other things. For example, get a good night's sleep, for heaven's sakes. I go to bed at 9 o'clock and get up at 4:23 every morning.
Nice.
And at the club working out at 5 a.m. Get a good night's sleep, eat well, don't overeat, read a lot, read a motivation book at least once a year.
We have a lot of ideals in common, sir. No doubt. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go off and get that book because I want to know what the other 45 are. And I really appreciate this.
You bet. And listen, I'm so old, they've canceled my blood type. Yeah, if you overhear me talking about happy hour, I'm talking about a nap. When I was a teenager, the Dead Sea was only sick.
So you do comedy too. Welcome. Thanks so much, sir. We really appreciate what you've done for this country for the last century. I really appreciate what you've done for my audience today.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me mention one other thing.
Sure.
I've been married to the same woman 70 years.
Oh my gosh.
And she had a lot to do with my financial success.
Yeah. You're a very lucky guy, as is she, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.